Greetings again, horror fans. I'm Jaime and Fuego.
I am Cecil Laird.
And welcome to
The Horror Show!
Where we're about to get spooktacular again for our third season, my friend.
Absolutely. This time we're going to be reviewing the movie John Dies at the End by Don Coscarelli, starring Chase Williamson, Paul Mays, and, of course, the awesome Paul Giamatti.
He's a gangsta, hence the last name being a G, man. And this movie is... Man, Don Coscarelli, what can I not say about him? As you can see
He's
by
one of
my
your
shirt.
favorites,
Yes,
obviously.
I know. It's pretty evident by the shirt. But yeah, Phantasm V coming out, allegedly the last chapter. So stoked for that.
He's done the whole Phantasm series.
Exactly, yep. Responsible for the Tall Man, an icon in the horror game. And
the Tall Man played by Angus Scrimm.
Angus Scrimm, correct.
Who also actually appears in John Dies at the End.
He's got a little short appearance, a little cameo, which made me smile, just like he did in... the Masters of Horror that Coscarelli did? Scrimm was the bad guy in it, if I recall correctly.
Yep, absolutely. So go ahead, wax poetic about Don Coscarelli. How good is this guy?
Everything from Phantasm to even Beastmaster, I think
Wait,
terribly...
he did Beastmaster?
He did Beastmaster as well, yeah.
How did I not know that?
That's him jumping away from the horror game a little bit. But...
Anyone that was born in the 80s or even the late 70s that sat around on Saturdays... After they watched their cartoons, they probably ended up watching TNT, which usually ended up showing the Beastmaster.
It was in the recycled rotation.
Didn't realize that. Okay, please continue.
Yeah, he also did a film I think is terribly underrated with Bruce Campbell. It is called Bubba Hotep.
Oh my god. If you guys haven't watched Bubba Hotep, you're missing out. We might throw an extra Bubba Hotep review for later in the season because it is worth checking out, you guys. It's about Elvis in a retirement home.
Elvis did not die. He
did
in fact
not die.
Switched places with somebody else and is still alive.
Fighting evil, no less.
Yeah, mummies and all kinds of stuff. But
let's get back to John Dies at the End.
Yes, we have diverted. So
absolutely.
Cecil,
let me tell you all about John Dies at the End. So basically, John Dies at the End is about a man named David Wong and his friend John.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
basically
Hence the title character.
Exactly, John. Well, not quite yet, but eventually you find out that there's a lot going on in this movie, and David Wong and John are essentially spiritualists / exorcists who are investigating things that are of the supernatural variety.
It's almost like Frighteners with a little bit of Ghostbusters and Donnie Darko.
That's a good way.
All kinds of stuff.
A little bit of everything, but it's woven together in a really unique fashion. So they basically, David Wong is the main character, and he gets involved in this story. And we start off with him speaking to Paul Giamatti, who's playing a reporter, and he's trying to explain to him what exactly is going on with what he's been up to, which is an sort of naturally unbelievable story.
Seeing a realm that most people cannot perceive.
Involving a drug called soy sauce, or the sauce, in other words.
That is the slang they use for it.
Exactly. It's sort of a black substance that almost looks like it's living when you look at it up close. So
it's like intravenously put in, but if you see the liquid by itself, it's got little hairs sticking out of it.
Right.
It looks living, to put it bluntly.
So David Wong is recounting his story for Paul Giamatti's reporter character, and you find out that he and John got sent, or they went out on this mission to figure out what was going on with this girl, and they find out about the soy sauce, and John pretty quickly disappears, but doesn't entirely, because throughout the film, David Wong is getting calls from John.
Not quite dead, but because he's going through this psychedelic thing, his mind is just kind of floating around and projecting itself.
And time moves weirdly in this sort of thing. Like the calls are coming throughout different spans of time.
You don't have to answer them with a phone. You can hold up a hot dog.
A bratwurst. It's really funny. He's like, he's talking on a phone which is broken, and John's like, do me a favor, buy a bratwurst. So he buys a bratwurst. He's like, now hold it up to your ear. And he holds it up, and he's like, can you hear me still? He's like, okay, I get it. I get the point.
That's actually better.
Yeah. So it's really funny. It's out there. And basically, David Wong has to figure out what happened with John and what's going on with this essentially almost another dimension that's encroaching on our dimension.
Indeed.
And I won't go into too much further because then we're entering into spoiler territory.
But we'll have those juicy details for you too.
Absolutely. But for this one, you gotta say that this movie is at the very least unique.
Very unique. The tone is strange. It's goofy, it's sarcastic, and then it gets gory, and I mean, it's just such a smorgasbord of coolness and
you know what it is
for sure.
The
it's
way
like a
I
Whedon
describe,
vibe at times.
I'll tell you, the notes I made for it is it's a story driven by intrigue. Like, there's different things that pop up that you're like, wow, really? What? Like, how does that work? And you keep watching to figure out how things go along and to figure out how David fits into all this stuff. And like, there's a different world. At some point in the middle, there's a really cool scene where he sort of convinces Paul Giamatti's reporter character that what he's saying is real. And again, I won't say too much as to how, but it's a really cool scene, and stay tuned for the spoiler episode in order to find that out.
It's almost about seeing the things that you don't really pay attention to normally, and if just out of the corner of your eye, that's when you can
keep a close look. Pay attention when you're not meaning to pay attention, and you might catch a glimpse of something that you didn't even know was actually out there.
And something frightening too, by the way.
Absolutely. So let's talk about the acting in the movie. What did you think of the acting?
The goofiness really fit well. The fact that there was a sense of sarcasm, especially about the two leads. John a little more so than the slightly more reserved
They were
David
really
Long.
Goofy with each other.
They had good chemistry, though. They played well off each other.
There's a good scene towards the beginning of the movie where they kind of face a giant meat monster. And at one point,
when they're in that house and the girl's projecting herself.
Exactly.
And this isn't spoiler territory. This is early.
It happens early in the movie, so it's not a big deal.
It's just showing what they do.
Yeah, and it's really funny that the interplay that they have and how they sort of handle these supernatural situations. It's sort of like nothing that you've seen very much in movies. So
more so on TV. There's like a calm, cool kind of quirkiness. I keep making the Whedon references, but they're there, man.
Right. Now, let me jump into the cinematography, because this movie had a bit of unique cinematography for sure, especially at the very beginning of the movie. They do some really cool, interesting things with the camera and how they reveal certain things, and it's pretty interesting. And I don't know, I just really dug the way the movie was presented to the viewer.
I like the effects. I like the way that.
There's a mixture of practical and CG effects.
And the CG is convincing. It doesn't really take away from the realism aspect. It doesn't pull you out and think, oh, that looks fake. It actually, as there's certain, I don't want to say possessions because that's going to divulge too much, but...
you couldn't quite call them that, but there's... there's some things that make it
side effects from the drug.
Exactly.
Let's put it that way.
Right. That make things particularly interesting. And the movie is sort of just as funny as it is twisted and different.
And the twistedness is the humor a lot of the time.
Well, it is,
too.
but there's a lot of funny dialogue and just interesting things. At one point, a doorknob gets turned into a dick. That's not a huge spoiler, but they're like, we can't get out that way because no one wants to grab the dick to get out of the door. Like, it's silly, it's fun, it's different.
And then another point where there's a scene of carnage, not to divulge anything or spoil, but it randomly switches to animation for whatever reason for this grisly scene. It's
absolutely. And they even are like, hey, let's cut to this, to make it a little funny. So
they even break the third wall and mention it.
The fourth wall. Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's good fun, you guys. Even if you weren't a big fan of Phantasm, this is different. This was it's funny, as I was watching the movie, I'm like, this is what would happen if Edgar Wright directed a horror movie. And I'm like, oh shit, Edgar Wright directed Shaun of the Dead. So it's very Edgar Wrighty. The cuts are sort of quick and fun, and they reveal certain things. So if you like Edgar Wright movies, between Shaun of the Dead, Hot Fuzz, or Scott Pilgrim Saves the World, that's what I was going for when I said it's as if Edgar Wright made a horror movie.
Yeah.
Because it was very Scott Pilgrim.
The whole film has a very sharp wit to it.
Very sharp wit, very quick cuts a lot of the time, and you have to pay attention, but it's totally worth it. And specifically, there's a scene involving him convincing Paul Giamatti of what's going on that is fantastic.
Yeah. Where he finally convinces him.
Absolutely.
Makes him believe. So
I think that's probably covering it for our regular review of John Dies at the End. Stay tuned for our spoiler review, guys.
There's so much more to tell you.
Absolutely. There's a lot of good stuff. So make sure you check out our website at thehorrorshowchannel.com.
Yep. We also have our social media sectors that we petition you to scope out: Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter.
And again, this movie was very sort of choppy and a little bit ethereal, a little esoteric and out there. So why don't you guys tell us, what your favorite horror movie is in the comments below that is that way. That's just a little out there, not quite the norm, a little bit of a thinker, but really cool by the end.
Yeah, quirky, left of center, just...
We're always looking for good movies, so if you have something along these lines that's good, leave it in the comments below.
Yeah, we'd love to scope it out.
Absolutely. And remember, guys, stay scared.